Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Big drama in the VCT going down last night with roster changes still happening, Scrimbux getting leaked, and also Ye with his perspective on the current state of the meta here in competitive VALORANT. Many pro players do not seem to be an especially big fan of the current Tejo meta that we have. It's been a big conversation topic now for some time, and arguably as the pros get more familiar with the agent, he is becoming only stronger and stronger. Ye and Evil Geniuses do not seem so happy about it. What might Riot do to resolve some of these issues, if anything at all? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. This is relevant. We'll get back to this in a second. We also did see this from Sayf. Now, if you guys remember the comments that he made during the match the other day, that were, I mean, fascinating. Of course, fascinating that they actually broadcast them in the first place. And then, of course, they did the rounds. Sayf decided to respond to this and says that, I wasn't actually going to address this, but he said that he's been since then diagnosed with ADHD. And when I reflect about a lot of things in my personality, everything makes a lot more sense. So, obviously apologizes for everything like that. And he says he's taken a step back from social media so I can have more time to reflect and focus without the noise. I thought that was, probably fair enough. I think it's interesting, isn't it, really? Because, look, Sayf said those comments on stream the other day, and obviously people talked about them. And it's not like they're easy to live down. But the way that things work on the internet is that people had moved on, people weren't talking about that anymore. Whereas, of course, Sayf tweets about it. And not to say that it's necessarily a bad thing to come out and apologize, and maybe he felt like it was the right thing to do, but all of a sudden everyone's talking about it again, right? So that's just how things go. The news cycle moves so fast nowadays that Sayf and that drama was a discussion for 24 hours, and then the world moves on, and, it is what it is, it's in the past. And then Sayf mentions it again, and people are talking about it again. So it goes both ways, but of course, intrigued to your thoughts on that in the comments. Speaking of EMEA, by the way, we had, let's say, some interesting games last night. This was one of them. I mean, Floor... It's just going through it. Apex is just going through it. And this was just frankly unbelievable from Governor. I couldn't believe my eyes when he just takes himself straight down with the ultimate. You don't see this type of stuff every day. And I guess it was a little bit confusing with the breach ult and everything happening still. But, I mean, yeah, you can't allow that to happen. And Vitality take a clean 2-0 against Apex. Again, it's not exactly like Floor was hard carrying this series. And also notable that while Tejo was used by both teams on the Lotus, it's not like either Tejo, especially Sayf's Tejo, got an especially great level of impact. And of course, Governor's Tejo, we saw how that ended a couple of seconds ago. But it is tough for Floor and certainly for Apex right now. They continue to struggle. Floor was talking about how, depressing it is. I think there was even an interview where Floor mentioned how difficult it has been moving there to Berlin and, just challenging from multiple angles right now, especially with the team in a very difficult spot as it stands. The other big game yesterday was, not really a massive surprise. Liquid took down KOI with a quick 2-0. They do seem to be getting a little bit better with Serial. He's come in. They've made a bit of progress, I think. And this was mostly a pretty clean win, 13-9, and then on their pick on the split, it was 13-5. So, yeah, KOI go down 2-0. The way that now looks in EMEA is as follows. So, KOI are 0-4, they're cooked. Apex are 0-4, they're cooked. And, that's basically how it's going to be. We've got another couple of games, of course, upcoming today and over the coming days. Quickly on China, because these have just got underway. So the Chinese playoffs are now officially unveiled. Titan Esports Club are currently down 1-0 to Wolves, and it looks like they're about to get 2-0s. So, yeah, if TEC go down, they'll drop down to the losers bracket. This is a rough way to lose the Haven. Again, we're seeing Coco on the Tejo here on the Haven, and on the Icebox, we're also seeing Tejo and RB, or Tejo used by both teams, basically, right? So, we'll get back to him in a second, but clearly the meta has shifted to some degree. So that's the first game there on the upper side. The loser of that, of course, will drop down as you would well expect. Just to quickly have a look at some of the teams around the world, DFM, Furia, Movistar, all gamers looking pretty weak right now. Are they going to be able to turn it around for Major 2 or for Stage 2? That's certainly a question. Couple of roster things. Gen.G, they've made a couple of changes. Now, this was rumored, and it's interesting to think about some of the names that are going to go from the team, because Runner and Tamasi, players that pretty, notable players over the last couple of years in Europe, players that were expected maybe to go on to do great things, but instead Gen.G are benching them, right? And they're bringing in a couple of new players. They've got Flickless coming in and Ara coming in as well from their affiliate club, and they're hoping that it's going to take them in the right direction. I think with a team like Gen.G, if you're not very well positioned to win right now, you've got to try something. Even if it's a controversial change, I think you've got to try something. That's what they're going to do for their upcoming games. Flickless is definitely considered a player with plenty of potential. We know how good Cloud can be as well, so, you know, keeping him around kind of makes sense. They've got him locked down to a longer-term deal, so they better take advantage of it. And I think, you know, in my opinion, I'm surprised that Tomasi's gone, but definitely we'll see what they decide to do going forward and whether this actually works out for them, especially Flickless coming in is pretty exciting. Now, bit of drama with M80. They confirmed yesterday their coach is gone. Well, one of their coaches. So Drew Spark, you guys may know him, of course, from Sentinels. He joined M80 and effectively built this team, was at least massively involved in building the team they have. And they came second at the recent VCL. Not bad, really. They can kick on from there, potentially go on to win Ascension. But they made a change, and it's interesting that this has happened, right? Because, of course, B-Dog was gone, and they brought in Victor. That's the change they've made. Is it going to work? I don't know. We'll see. But, of course, alongside that, Chet came in as well, former NRG coach. And then today, Drew Spark is officially gone. Now, Drew says the following. I've decided to step down from my position. I want to thank the team, of course, and, of course, Psycho's also over there too, for always being in my corner. I'd greatly appreciate you both. I'm very proud of the team that Don and I built. That's Psycho, the hard work, the team that I put in to make a run in Stage 1, and my individual growth as new head coach. I'll still be supporting the boys in M80. I'll miss working with you. Hope to see you ascend at the end of the year. Looking forward to a short break before refocusing on future coaching opportunities. The job isn't finished. So really interesting, right? Like, what's happened here to make this happen? Because, you know, for Drew to walk away from a paying opportunity to take a break, unless he's got something else maybe lined up elsewhere, maybe even in Tier 1, just because, you know, he says he hopes to see the team ascend. If he's got something else in the works for Tier 2, then he might not hope that they'd ascend. He hopes that maybe his new team ascends. But this is the interesting dynamic when you have Psycho there kind of managing the ship and obviously general managing things. You then bring in Chet as a new coach, and maybe Drew just feels like, okay, there isn't really a role for me here anymore, especially with Victor coming in too. You know, Chet's kind of taken charge of the ship. So I don't think it's exactly like, oh, Chet's snaked him and he's kicked him out, but maybe Drew just feels that in this current team environment, he is not best placed, let's say, to do his best work. And, you know, Chet says, best of luck. I know it was only like 5 or 6 days, but it was a pleasure nonetheless. And he says, look, he left on his own, if you could read. So, yeah, what do you guys think about that? I thought pretty interesting for M80 what's going on there right now. And they did have a good series win last night as well, with Sata having a pretty good performance too. They went against Trust in Plug and they got the win 2-1. It was a close fought affair, but of course, Victor coming in for B-Dog has been the big discussion point. Look, at the end of the day, that would have been inspired by Chet to some degree. Like if they were going to bring in Coach Chet and maybe they felt like they needed that experience to get to the next level, Victor coming on board is probably all part of the same program. Is it going to work? I mean, that's definitely a question that needs to be raised. Trust in Plug won the game 1 Ascent. They then lost the split in a banger 13-11. Who is surprised? Not even an overtime, though. Again, double Tejo on both teams, as we tend to see, and we had one Tejo from Bones on the Haven, but it wasn't enough. The non-Tejo comp got the job done with the Yoru on the Sato. But this is one of the big conversations that Ye was especially having last night on Tejo as an agent right now. Here's Tarek trying to waltz into the site and gets killed by Tejo rockets through the wall. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. And I imagine this is like, you know, a line up and a strategy. And Tarek looks to his right and was like, hang on a second, how did I die there? It doesn't really make much sense. But that's how the game currently is. So people are coming up with ideas like this all the time. And I think the frustrating thing about Tejo for many is exactly what Ye gets into. Is like, look, you basically just put the missiles down on the spike, and what are you meant to do about it? I think this is the Ye's point. A couple of weeks ago, he made the point that maybe there should be some sort of cooldown period on using abilities nearby the spike, or maybe it should simply not be possible, or it doesn't regenerate so you can use them again. Maybe some abilities you get them once around, or you get them once full stop, and then if you're around the bomb site and the spike is planted, you don't have access to them in the same way. This is not something I think the Riot will ever do, but it is something to consider because, as Ye says, just put the missiles on the spike, and it makes the game, I mean, look, it's a lot of retake simulator at the moment, right? That's the way the current meta has gone, and Tejo, in many respects, exacerbates that meta because he allows teams to get the spike down, just back up, get into a safe position, and then use the missiles on the spike, as Ye implies. And it's been a major conversation point now for some time. Ten certainly made the point about the map design and the level of wall bangs that were possible on certain maps to effectively mean that site retakes don't exist in the way that maybe makes them maximally entertaining. You simply use all your utility to get the spike down, and then you use ultimates, or you use, like, you know, Tejo's abilities with the missiles to stop him being defused. And it makes for a meta which is probably not the most pleasing on the eye, and more than likely not the most pleasing to play either. But yeah, what do you guys think in the comments? Because I think Ye is definitely getting pretty frustrated with the state of the meta right now. And this was, I think, this is his tweet a few weeks ago now, actually, at this point, a couple of weeks ago, where he mentioned that on a lot of maps it's difficult with post-plant utility. Maybe we could find a way to reduce damage for those type of abilities when in the spike diffuse radius. So I think this is kind of an additional point to what he said previously. Couple of Scrimbux to close out the video here. Envy were up 11-5. NRG were playing at 100T, and they were down 5-8. So pretty interesting just to keep an eye on, really, what's happening there. We can see Marder and Zix playing each other here. So, you know, of course, NRG playing at all has been causing a lot of talking points over the last few days. There was also an interesting one from the day before. So MRBR played Qubit Academy, and this was 9-5, and it actually was 9-10. So pretty good work from, look, we know that MRBR are pretty good. We know that Qubit Academy are pretty good, but this would be good practice, I would say, for both teams, and it puts potentially Sentinels in a good spot as well, because the better Qubit get, the better, like, they can practice against top teams, the better competition they become for Sentinels when they scrim them. I mean, theoretically, which they would do on occasion, and then, you know, try out new metas, try out new ideas, because, you know, they're not going to get leaked to the opposition. And was a big talking point in the Pacific over the last couple of weeks. Sentinels also up 10-6 on SR Black, of course. Pancakes and the guys over there, the team that won over M80 in the finals, that recent VCT Challenger side. But that's pretty much what we have to leave it on for the day. So very much interested your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.